If you want to stay on, actually, Greg,
Yeah,
we're promoting Wordsmith Academy on Inside Comics.
Dun dun dun. But I've prepared nothing. How are we going?
Yeah, well, we're just going to talk about how to improve your writing. that's the topic. And
how does this
Mr. Miyagi hands? I'm getting ready.
Hey guys, welcome to Inside Comics with George Michail. Really quick, if you like this kind of content, make sure you're subscribed and tell a friend about it. Today I'm joined by novelist Andrew Buckley and writer-illustrator GMB CHOMICHUK. Guys, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Absolutely.
Thanks for setting this up so far in advance too. I really
it's so great to have this kind of advance notice. It really is. Yeah.
So you guys are both writers, and you're both part of Wordsmith Academy, an online learning platform where people can improve their writing skills. And we'll get into that in a minute. But before we do, I'd like to just kind of pick your brains about how can creative people improve their writing skills, just in general. Do you have any tips?
Greg?
I have many tips, but it depends. We're talking comics specifically here, right? And so I think
Inside Comics,
No, we can just writing in general.
Writing in general, but if we talk, this is Inside Comics?
Yes.
So if we're talking about comics, George, I think that most people, when they start writing, are writing short stories. They're writing maybe some flash fiction. They're working on just words on the page. And a really good step of getting your script chops together is to take that short story, that little bit of prose, and start recognizing that every character can only do one thing per panel. So one verb per character per panel. So if you now go through your basic layout of your flash fiction or your short story, and you put a page break everywhere where you think there would be a page turn in your story, you'll start realizing that a very short story can become very quickly an extremely long piece of comics. And so you got to get to your good friend, the cut, and just start taking stuff out that isn't necessary. And that's the hardest thing to learn, is when to cut and how often. What do you think about that, Andrew?
I don't disagree with you. I think it's very applicable. I mean, there's 100 different things you can give for tips for writing, but I guess the ones that have been most useful for me is kind of a combination of planning and practice. So when I started writing novels, I came from a screenwriting background and transitioned to novel writing. And I didn't know what I didn't know. So it took me 6 years to write my first novel as a consequence. These days, it takes me about 5 to 6 months if I'm actually being diligent about my writing process. And that's because I spend like 3 weeks at the beginning of any project and I plan the entire thing out. I do an entire story planning project based around that one concept. And because of that 3 weeks of planning and research, where I outline the entire story, the chapter breakdowns, the character arcs, everything, plus whatever is going to be happening in the sequel, because everything has to be sequelized these days. I can write a novel to a blueprint in 5 or 6 months, no problem at all. So that's the best. I've talked about that in schools. I've talked about it at writing conferences. Like, planning is key. Being a pantser, writing by the seat of your pants, totally fine if that is your personality. But if you actually want to get your process down and get content out the door fast, which is important these days, then planning is the way to go.
And I'll add to that pantsing comment, if I may, George,
Please do.
that a really important part of, if you're not a planner, but you are a pantser, you want to write by the seat of your pants, let your characters tell you everything. The moment it's not working, you don't put it aside and you say, oh, I have to wait for the muse. You instead say, I'm done with that story. It's over. And you start another one. And in that way, you will produce work quickly. You'll get to fly by the seat of your pants, and you'll get to the end more often than if you put it in a drawer and say, oh, when the mood strikes. Don't wait for the mood. As Frank Herbert said, mood is a thing for cattle and love play, not writing.
That's interesting. So you just like kill the story?
Over.
Really?
Done.
Wow.
Yeah. And then start something else.
That's so harsh.
It's harsh, but I mean, there's only so many hours in the day, and we're all going to be dead soon. So you better get to writing.
So harsh and bleak.
Welcome to my life.
That's so true though. It's like you really have to, make time for your writing and, dedicate like I'm going to write now. And because when you wait for the feeling to hit you, you don't actually end up doing anything. So you actually need to, say, okay, this morning I'm going to go and, I like to get in my car and I go for a little drive. And while I'm driving, I think about what I want to write about. And then when I get to the destination, usually sitting in front of a lake, I stop, I park my car like a weirdo, and I type on my phone. And I'm just that weird guy sitting by the lake in the car. And so just kind of making like a dedicated time really helps.
I steal back time all the time, George. Your process is reminiscent of mine. I have certain stories that I will write. I'm a person who likes to still do his banking in person for a very specific reason, so that I can wait in line, because I have a story on my phone I only write when I'm in line at the bank. I have a story I have on my phone that I only write when I'm in line at the grocery store. I have a story on my phone that I only work on when I'm in line at the pharmacy, right? And so and I have a bunch of stories like that. And so when I find myself in a line and I'm like, oh no, I go, yes, I get to do some writing. And I'll sometimes pick the longest line just so that I can write a little bit more. You got to claw back that time whenever you can.
That's amazing. I've never even heard that concept. I love that idea.
Mm-hmm. I can't wait to hear your bank story.
I'm going to start going to the bank more for that. That's great. Writing is a lifelong learning pursuit. Like, you're never at the top of your game, realistically. Like, you can always be better. You can always sharpen it. You can always practice it more and harder and get better at it. Like, there's always going to be that opportunity to sharpen your craft. You only do it by practice. You only do it by talking to other writers. You only do it by, working on different projects with other people and networking and, going to conferences and Comic-Cons and like meeting these people, because they're inspiring, because they have some grains of wisdom that you likely, never thought of, like, writing in the lineup at the bank. I never would have considered that. But I mean, I just stand there and like mindlessly scroll social media. I love that idea. Just having something on your phone to open up and
write. Gotta steal it back. That time, it's so precious.
Definitely going to. So you've got to keep practicing at it, no matter what that looks like for you, whether it is taking courses or it is just, having, set time aside every day to do it, or writing in the line at the bank, or whatever it looks like. You've got to keep practicing at it, because it's the only way you ever, keep continually getting better.
So you two are both instructors on Wordsmith Academy, and I'm wondering if you can tell us about Wordsmith Academy and what are the different classes that you offer on that site?
So we teach all different kinds of writing. So the whole idea of Wordsmith Academy was, one, to help people get out of their own way, so that they can actually, practice more, so that they can learn some intricacies that they might not know about, and get them really motivated to write. That comes with 3 different kinds of classes. We have live classes that are scheduled online. We have some that are in person, but COVID obviously has impacted that. We have classes that recorded and posted online, so people can stream them after the fact. And we have self-paced courses, which are longer form. So coming up, for example, in the next little while, we have a number of TV writing and screenwriting classes. We have novel writing classes coming up. We have poetry classes for the first time, and we have GMB CHOMICHUK teaching some comic book writing. So do you want to explain kind of about your class, Greg? Because you can
sure. Well, the class that Andrew asked me to come to the Wordsmith Academy with was about if you are a writer and you've been looking on the shelves and you've been seeing the graphic novel shelf of every bookstore get bigger and bigger and bigger, and asking yourself, how do I take what I'm already good at, writing words, and adding pictures to it? And what are some of the good starting steps for adapting prose into comics or picture books or illustrated novels? We're going to cover all of those things. When to turn the knob up on the number of pictures and when to turn it down, depending on the kind of work that you like to do. So we're going to break down in a very easy step-by-step way how you can take your writing and put it through the paces of converting it into a comic script.
Can you tell me a little bit about how much these classes cost and what's on the website? What should we go and we click on the website? What are we going to do on there?
the classes are very expensive, like extortionately expensive. No, they're very, very reasonable in comparison to a lot of writing classes out there. We want to make it affordable so that people can actually, take these classes and get the benefit of the experience. So if you go to wordsmithacademy.com, you click on live classes, it will give you the current upcoming list of live classes. They range in price and length. We have some classes that are 2 nights. We have some that are single nights. Classes run between 2 to 3 hours. Cost range between $45 to $75 US, I believe, per class. You can also go to the free webinar tab on Wordsmith Academy, where we have free sessions with that feature, introductions to certain classes so that people can learn a bit more before they sign up. And we have Q&As with our instructors as well, which are all recorded and also available on our YouTube channel that's associated with the site.
That's like super reasonable, because like if you're interested in being like a creative person, that's not a big investment to put some money in and like, really back your hobby up. And like, you spend so much money on books and stuff like that, but actually like learning with an instructor is huge. Sorry, what was that?
Money on books.
No, you spend so much money on books. Why not spend some money on like actually having someone give you some feedback? That's what I mean.
I don't believe in buying books.
I don't believe in buying books. It's sitting in a sea of bookshelves.
Don't buy books.
It's true, though. I mean, there's something compelling about learning craft from people who are really passionate about storytelling craft. I mean, it's wonderfully motivating for one thing. I mean, I sit in on all the classes because it's my school, but every single time I'm in one, I'm like, oh my God, I really want to go and write right now. And then I inevitably procrastinate for the next several days. But the motivation is there, the inspiration is there. Like there's definitely a spark that comes from learning from professionals.
And there is there's a part of writing that when you realize, I wish I had learned it sooner, that writing any kind of genre is still a self-archaeology, and you can really dig into some part of yourself when you're sending your imagination into some other world. And those two things kind of happen as a juxtaposition within you that, that's a ride that you can take any time by just flipping open a book and starting to write. Converting it into something that you can put on a shelf for obsessives like myself to buy in enormous quantities. That's a whole other part of the business, and you can learn a lot of that at Wordsmith Academy.
Awesome stuff. So everybody, there's a link to Wordsmith Academy in the description of this video. Click that link and go check out this awesome website. Andrew Buckley, GMB CHOMICHUK, I want to thank you guys for being on Inside Comics. And until next time, peace.